I've been looking forward to playing the WCW games on both the PS1 and the N64. I really only have some strong memories of Mayhem because of a Christmas present that I got, and I didn't really play the WCW games on the N64. I might have played one of them, I think like NWO Revenge or something like that, but I'm not totally sure. So let's check out WCW vs. the World. There is no story for this, which could be a little disappointing, but there are a lot of matches that you can play, and the roster is huge. The controls took some time for me to get used to. Thankfully, I have the manual for this one, so I didn't have to go online and try to find one that somebody uploaded.
When you pause the match, you can see the move list, which is kind of a double-edged sword. Unlike with WWF Attitude and Warzone, you don't have a long list of moves that you can do, and you don't really need to open it up to see what moves you can do on any specific, situation, like if your opponent's on the ground or they're on a turnbuckle or something like that. This makes WCW The World less like a fighting game. While it still has some of those controls, it is a little bit more accessible for new players than something like Attitude or Warzone. So the game modes are League Challenge, Best of 7, Exhibition Match, Elimination Match, Tournament, League Matches, and also double title matches. It's pretty awesome to have all of these, even if, you kind of have to make up reasons for why these matches are going on. There are 52 wrestlers in this game, and there might be more because I didn't really see if there were any unlockable characters. It's a massive list, and it's really cool to see that it's comprised of both WCW wrestlers and some promotions that I didn't really know existed, and I'm just sort of assuming that the game is saying that they're real. It's pretty crazy to see all these people. Some of them I recognize, and most of them I'm just completely lost on who they actually are. I'm guessing that they're based off of real wrestlers, and if I'm wrong, please let me know in the comments below. Like always, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert. I'm just some idiot on the internet voicing my opinion about a game. The gameplay is pretty easy. You're doing a simulation of a pro wrestling match, so yeah, it's pretty awesome actually. There are these two spirit meters at the bottom of the screen, and at first I was pretty unsure as to which one was mine. They both just kind of started flashing red or changing colors over the course of the match, and when I first started I didn't really understand what was happening. I figured once one of them went white, that meant my health was down or something like that. So, yeah, it was kind of weird to play this at first and just not really see like a health bar or anything like that. The user interface, or at least, I'm sorry, not the user interface, the heads-up display is pretty clean, actually. It's kind of cool. I would have liked to have had a health bar, but once I actually looked up and saw what these spirit meters meant, it made a whole lot more sense. I still do prefer a health bar to the spirit meter, even if it does make a whole lot more sense after I read the manual. You can win matches by pinfall, submission, or countout. Something odd I noticed about the wrestling matches is that they give you to a count of 20 to get back in the ring. I've noticed this with other wrestling games as well. I'm guessing this is how the matches go in Japan, since a lot of these games are basically reskins of Japanese wrestling games. I've always been used to just the 10 count in pro wrestling, even if they are kind of liberal with it at times. You can usually tell if the match isn't supposed to end in a count out because, well, the ref will just keep going and they break the count at random times. As a side note, because I do have the manual for this game, there's a phone number in it for a hint line. These were phone numbers where you could call up and just get hints for the game, and maybe the person actually knew what they were talking about, and maybe they didn't. Sometimes it might have been an automated system. You just didn't really know, And maybe they were helpful, maybe they weren't. I've only ever known one person to call one of these numbers, and it wasn't until college that somebody did it, and this guy called up the Magic the Gathering helpline to ask a stupid question that really nobody cared about except for him. That's just my little side note on hint lines and that sort of thing. This game does feel an awful lot more like a simulation of a wrestling match. It's much better than many of the arcade experiences that I had played before it. I think in this timeline, I may have already done the WCW Mayhem videos. It's been a little while, I'm sorry. But I would say I like this game a lot more than Mayhem and Attitude and many of the other PS1 games that I've played. It's a pretty great wrestling game. WCW versus the World looks pretty good. It's what you should expect from a video game released in 1997. The closest game I can really compare this to is Power Move Pro Wrestling. Granted, WCW vs. the World looks better than that. The character models are much more detailed, the moves look a little bit better, and of course, the crowd looks a lot better in this game. The animations on the moves look really good, but there are some odd moments just because, that's the way games were made back then. Like characters punching or kicking through the other wrestler. That just kind of happens. It's not anything that is really a big criticism. It's more of just a hilarious moment when you're playing a game like this. While the character models look pretty blocky, this is just kind of a product of the time, and I could criticize it, but it would really just be a whiny retrospective on the game. It's not anything that looks any different from the N64 games, or honestly some of the other games from this era. Some of the wrestlers look a lot better than others. Each one uses basically the same character model, so you have some unintentional comedy here. I personally like the fact that there is a flabby Ultimo Dragon in the game. I have no idea why I find it funny, but every time I either played as him or played against him, I chuckled a little bit. Maybe it's because I know what the real-life counterpart looks like, and it didn't really look anything like this flabby Ultimo Dragon. I don't really know many of the international wrestlers in this, so I don't really know how close they are to their real-life counterparts. Feel free to enter that into the comments below and tell me anything about it, because I was a little lost when it came to the international stars. I do like the almost hand-drawn character pictures on the select screen. Some of them look kind of funny to me, and it just adds to the charm of the game. You don't see these type of pictures anymore. Now they just use like actual pictures of the wrestlers. And seeing these sort of goofy hand-drawn pictures, it was great. I love going back and finding something like this and just having fun with what the game has to offer. The overall presentation of the game looks really good. The crowd looks nice. The ring looks good. The only thing that I could criticize about that is that there are no ring entrances. If Saturday Night Slam Masters could pull off ring entrances, I'm not sure why a PS1 game couldn't, but whatever. Overall, I like the graphics. They are dated by today's standards, but I still kind of like them. WCW vs. the World isn't going to look as good as Smackdown, but it doesn't really need to. And it does look a lot better than In Your House and Power Move Pro Wrestling. WCW vs. the World is a pretty fun game to play. The graphics are what you should expect from a 3D game released in 1997. The controls are pretty good, even if they do take a little bit of time to get used to. This is one of the games that I think is still fun to go back and play today. It doesn't have, the same graphics as something from really the late 90s and early 2000s, but it still looks pretty good, and it is a fun experience to play this. I'm not sure which game I'm going to be going over next. I think I'm going into some of the ECW stuff that I have never played before, but always saw either in like the discount bin or just sitting on the shelf waiting for somebody to buy it. So I'm kind of interested in playing those and just seeing what they have to offer. Anyway, that's going to wrap things up. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and I will talk to you all later. Bye.